Welcome to Work This Way, a labor and employment podcast. I'm Tina Emerson, here today with attorney Faye Edwards. How are you, Faye?
I'm great, thank you.
So joining us today to discuss how employers can navigate an OSHA fatality inspection is Maynard Nexsen labor and employment attorney David Dubberly. David is certified by the South Carolina Supreme Court as a specialist in labor and employment law and is trusted by his clients to help them navigate compliance matters, defense of government investigations, and litigation. Good to see you, David.
Thank you, Tina. Good to see you.
Sure thing. Well, thanks very much for joining us on the podcast today. We are talking about a sad topic today. Unfortunately, it's workplace fatalities. So, they occur every year, regardless of the measures taken, and a lot of industries have to deal with this, or at least be prepared for it. So can you start us off by sharing what industries are seeing the most workplace deaths and what circumstances are causing those?
Yes, it is a sad topic. But it's unfortunately, workplace deaths are not uncommon. In 2023, which is the last year for which we have statistics, there were almost 5,300 work-related deaths. And so, this is something that employers need to be familiar with. They need to be familiar with the OSHA inspection process in general, but in particularly how investigations are conducted by the agency when someone has passed away. And you asked about industries. The industry that is most affected by workplace deaths is construction. Construction accounts for a full 20% of all workplace deaths every year. And of those accidents, 40% of them are caused by falls, slips, and trips. So falls from a beam or from a roof or from a ladder or slipping on a wet surface or some other kind of slippery surface or tripping on an uneven floor or on something that was left on the floor that shouldn't have been there. So that's one reason why construction is so much affected. But construction is not the only industry that experiences these types of accidents, unfortunately. Warehousing, agriculture, manufacturing, those industries also have a significant number of work-related deaths.
So the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, investigates each workplace fatality. What are the first steps an employer should take once a fatality has occurred?
So there is a mandatory step, and then there are steps that are like best practices. The mandatory step is the employer has a deadline of 8 hours from the accident to report it to OSHA. And they can report it online, they can report it over the phone. But once they make the report and provide basic information to OSHA, OSHA will then promptly, almost always, do an in-person investigation. That, like, if an accident happens this afternoon and it's called into OSHA, they will maybe get there before the end of the day today, or more likely be there like first thing, 7 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. And of course, we will try to get to the accident site before OSHA and start understanding how this accident could have happened. So that's the mandatory step. You have to report to OSHA within 8 hours. There are additional best practices that we would suggest as far as communication goes. Number one would be communicating with legal counsel. And the reason we say that is that if OSHA determines a workplace fatality was caused by an employer's willful violation of one of its standards, or a repeat violation of one of its standards, the agency will consider filing criminal charges against people involved with the company. So contacting legal counsel is probably call number one after OSHA. Of course, the company also is going to have to communicate with the family of the deceased employee. And of course, the family is going to be devastated. This is a hard conversation for the company to have, a hard call for them to make. But the family is going to have a lot of questions about not necessarily what happened, but what the next steps are as far as legal issues involving their loved ones. And the employer is going to want to be there to provide whatever support and assistance the family needs. The leadership of the company is also going to need to communicate with coworkers, because if an employee sees another employee involved in a terrible accident, it's going to be traumatic for them, or friends of the employee, it's going to be traumatic for them, and they're going to need counseling, and the employer is going to need to provide that. And then finally, the employer needs to be prepared to communicate with the media, which would involve having a statement prepared, a statement that expresses concern, that does not blame the victim, that describes in very general terms what's going on, and that has been reviewed by legal counsel. And because the media is going to start calling right away. They monitor communications between first responders, and we need to be prepared to speak with them.
And when OSHA arrives on site, obviously when something like this happens at a workplace, the leadership starts to rally to start getting all these players in order to do the statements and make all the right moves and talk to the decedent's family. What is it that happens when OSHA first arrives? Who do they want to talk to? What information are they looking for?
So they're going to arrive. The first thing they're going to do is present their credentials, and then you're going to take them back to a conference room. And they're going to want to talk to people who can help them understand what happened. Usually, like say in a manufacturing context, that's going to be like the plant manager, the safety director, and the HR manager. And it could involve other people, but usually the employer will have 3 or 4 representatives there in addition to their legal counsel. And OSHA will have a lot of questions, and the employer will have to do its best to respond to that. They'll want to know all about the background of the company, about the company's OSHA compliance history, all about the accident. They'll talk about where in the plant they want to go. They're going to want to go to the accident site and possibly to surrounding areas that may have relevant information for their investigation. They're going to tell you in the opening conference they want to see your 300 logs, which are injury and illness reports that employers are obligated to keep. And the one best practice that we would suggest for the opening conference is the OSHA investigators, and often there are 2 of them who come when a fatality has occurred, they will ask several different ways, is there anything you should have done or could have done to prevent this accident from happening? And of course, these are terrible tragedies, and employers want to be helpful. And sometimes they will give kind of a speculative answer, and they'll say, maybe we should have done this, and maybe we could have done that. And that may or may not be the case, but sometimes employers will say that in an effort to be helpful. And OSHA counts that as an admission by the employer that they have done something wrong. So it's important for the employer to be precise and careful and accurate and correct in answering questions like that, because they may say something in the moment in an effort to be helpful, but later on, kind of looking back at what really happened, it may turn out that they couldn't have done something that they said they might should have done.
And you touched on a little bit of the employer's response during an inspection by OSHA. Do you mind going a little bit further? What else an employer should be doing when the inspection occurs? Are there certain people that they should have together, like you mentioned, the representatives that might be there with them to represent the employers, and who they may be?
Sure. So after the opening conference, the the most substantive part of the inspection is the walk-around phase, where the OSHA inspectors and the employer representatives walk to the accident site, and OSHA takes a lot of pictures, asks a lot of questions, and tries to determine what happened and if any OSHA standards may have been violated. It is a very important for the company representatives to follow the OSHA inspector. You never want to let an OSHA inspector just wander through your facility. You want to see everything that they see. You want to hear everything they hear. You want to take a picture of anything they take a picture of. Sometimes they will take measurements with a retractable ruler. Sometimes they may measure air quality or something like that. There are all kind of things they could do. It's important that the employer's file replicate what is in OSHA's file. So that will be the walk-around phase. During this phase, as OSHA is going around the accident site, they may ask employees who are there questions. We call them over-the-shoulder interviews, because while the person is working, the OSHA inspector may lean in and ask them a question about what they're doing, and maybe what happened during the accident. And of course, we want to take notes when anything like that happens. We want to have notes of everything that OSHA is doing and everything they're asking, because when we listen carefully to what OSHA is saying, we can hear them forming a narrative of what they think happened and what they think the employer did wrong. And we want to be able to politely, respectfully, always, of course, saying the absolute truth and being 100% accurate, but we want to politely push back when we see them starting to form a narrative in their minds that is just not accurate. And that happens. And the employer needs to correct it at that point, because otherwise it'll show up in citations, and then they'll have to be trying to fix it from the back end.
And you noted that sometimes these over-the-shoulder interviews are happening. So the interviews aren't isolated to the employer leadership. So what should the employer do to prepare everybody else for the possibility of these employee interviews to kind of happen off the cuff?
So you can't coach the employee. So there's the interview at the very beginning of the opening conference. There are interviews of production employees over the shoulder during the walk around. And after the walk around is over, OSHA usually gives you a list of other people that they want to talk to. They might be hourly employees, they might be management employees. Usually it's a mix of both.
And that's a more formal situation than would be
You're
the
exactly
over the shoulder.
right.
Okay.
That's away from the production area, sitting down in a conference room. And for hourly employees, the employer does not have a right to be present unless the employee asks for the employer to be present during the interview.
And why is that?
That's the way OSHA has done it for decades. However, if a management employee is being interviewed, we have the right as management to be in the interview, and so we are able to, and we should be in there. No management employee should be interviewed without legal counsel present. And in interviews of both hourly and management, the OSHA compliance officer is going to be typing up notes, and then they're going to give that to the employee to review and sign. And, it's appropriate to tell the employees, even hourly employees, when OSHA puts something in front of you to sign, please read it carefully to make sure that it accurately reflects what you said. And definitely when management employees are interviewed, we are going to review the written statement before it is signed. And then in addition to, I guess, the interviews that you asked about, there are records that OSHA is going to want to see. I referred to the 300 logs before. They're usually going to want you to take them to where the OSHA poster is posted so that they can make sure that it's posted properly. And they're going to ask you for records. Some of them you may consider to be a trade secret, and so you will need to ask OSHA to treat those documents separately. You'll want to put a legend on there that says confidential trade secret. Even some areas of a manufacturing plant may be considered a trade secret. And you'll want to make sure that OSHA, when they take their pictures, they take them from an angle that does not end up with trade secret areas included in the photographs.
So you walked us through the beginning steps of when employer needs to reach out to OSHA and then legal counsel and then the walkthrough. Can you tell us lastly and walk us through the steps of a closing conference and how an employer can submit a notice of contest?
Yeah. So the last stage of the inspection is the closing conference, and it may take place right then, but more frequently in a fatality inspection, it'll take place a few weeks later after the inspector has had a chance to go back to their office and confer with their colleagues on what to do in this situation. During the closing conference, OSHA will let you know of what they think are possible violations, how they think the alleged violations might be corrected, and they'll explain the citation process to you. This is another opportunity, again, for the employer to politely, respectfully, correctly say, no, we didn't possibly violate that section of the OSHA regs, and this is why. So it's another opportunity to politely push back. After the inspection, the agency has 6 months to issue citations, and if the employer disagrees with them, there's a process to contest them. First, you can ask for an informal hearing, which gives you another chance to push back. And then if you don't get relief at the informal hearing, which frequently you don't in a fatality case, because OSHA, of course, is under pressure to try to find something that could have been done differently. And so if OSHA does not relent, then the next step would be to file the notice of contest. And that will give you an opportunity to try to negotiate a resolution with a trial lawyer for OSHA.
And I have a last quick question. At what point is company leadership trained on how to deal with such things? Is it throughout their careers, or is it the second this happens and they call you and say, what do I do now? Is it trial by fire, or is it along and along they are understanding how all of this works?
You see both. You see companies they're like the gold standard on training, and they'll train their managers on what to do in a situation like this. Other companies, it's like, okay, the accident has happened, and legal counsel comes in and gives them a crash course on the OSHA inspection process.
So it could go either way.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're glad that we have you here to walk us through all of those things. It's a very sad topic indeed, but definitely necessary advice to protect the company and respect family. So thank you so much for being with us to educate us all. Thanks so much. And thanks, Faye, for being with me today.
Tina.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Faye.
We'll see you next time on Work This Way.